forum, um, a reminder to I would like to state this reminder. DOE will respond to the queries in the following order. First, submitted via email. Second, submitted through the chat window. Third, participants who may wish to talk or raise their hand and will be called accordingly in order as first come first serve basis. For all questions, clarifications, please state to which presentation and or presenter you would like to address it to. And lastly, if time permits, participants may raise further clarification during the this open forum. Participants shall request clearance or acknowledgement from the moderator secretariat through the chat window or raise hand function before enabling their microphones. So let me turn over the microphone again to our OIC Division Chief, Engineer Mark Louis Olap.
Thank you, Mau. Good morning again sa ating pong lahat. Since I believe we don't receive any questions from via email, we'll be facilitating first our questions raised via yung chat window po natin. So, Matt, kindly, or sino ba yung nag-operate natin? Kindly display as well yung sequence ng ating mga questions raised by our participants. Okay, medyo pa-zoom lang ng konti. So, again, thank you for our presenters, to Yusek Vanessa for the opening remarks, as well to Director Mario for presenting the QTP revised guidelines, to Attorney Mai presenting the template for the QTP service contract, as well for Matt presenting the templates for the and the requirements for the eligibility requirements for the legal, technical, and financial, as well as the templates for our QTP's monthly report. So first, we have our first questions from Penelco. I believe ito pala yung separate, ito pala yung na-receive natin prior our IEC. So we have our first question is about is the designed 5-member of the QTP back coming from within the DU or other sectors of the communities? Director Mario, do we have specific response for this one?
Thank you, Boss Mark. Akala ko kasi tatapusin mo muna yung 4 questions.
Ay, sige. Sige, sir. Banggitin ko muna yung lahat siguro from Penelco. So after yung first question about... Yes, sir. The designated 5 members of the QTP back coming from within the DU or other sectors of the community. Second question is there any limit to the number of the QTP back TWG or technical working group? Third question is there any draft of the QSC for the DU's distribution utility to follow? Fourth, and may we be clarified of section 16.5 of the DC 2019-11 11-015, does the DU mentioned here is for all DUs or for off-grid DUs only? So, yun po yung 4 questions ng Penelco. I think I can further answer muna yung number 3 and 4 po, Boss Mario, for the draft QSC or Qualified Third-Party Service Contract for the DUs to follow. So, ito po yung present kanina ni Attorney Mai Roa. Yun po yung template na na-approve po ni Secretary for the Qualified Third-Party Service Contract. As for the fourth question, if yung pong guidelines natin is yung the DU mentioned ba dito ay yung all DUs or for off-grid DUs only, lahat po ng DUs yung tinutukoy natin as long as the service QTP service contract has been declared by the DU. So yun po, Boss Mario, for the third and fourth questions.
Yeah, thank you. So for questions number 1 and 2, it's the designated 5 members of QTP BAC coming from the DU or other sector of the community, and the limit of the number of the DWG? Well, ang response po rito is not necessarily kailangan ng representative from the community. The DO can identify directly. Ang pinoprohibit lang po ay sana hindi kasali yung mga opisyales. Nakalagay lang ho doon sa ating DC, no BOD members of the EC or DU or NPC SPAG should be member ng BAC. As far as the number of TDWG po, it's up to the DU then or the EC. It's the number that would deliver the most efficient assistance to our QTP BAC. Please remember lang po na TWG is a support, the technical and financial support po ng ating Bids and Awards Committee. Thank you very much po.
Okay, so thank you, Boss Mario, for the first questions raised by Penelco. So to proceed po, we have our first questions received via our chat window around 9:58 during the presentation of Director Mario of the QTP Service Guidelines from NPC, from BP Rene Bariwela. We would like to clarify on the presentation, particularly for NPC existing new areas, mini-grid, and incoming mini-grid areas will be subject to QTP. So,
if I may.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So for NPC, I think the primarily question is included by yung existing new areas nila as part of the QTP, no? Well, we have to, as far as NPC, my understanding is lahat ng kanilang mini-grid areas na nakaprogram na would not be affected by the QTP program. However, ang magiging inclusive sa ating NPC SPAG would be the areas that the distribution utilities and ECs subjected to competitive selection process but already met twice bidding failures. So yun yung magiging kasama sa NPC SPAG. Or yun pong mga areas na na-identify ni DOE or ni QTP proponent na hindi nagawa ni DU para mag-conduct ng competitive selection process, yun po yung mga masasama sa ating NPC program. Now, for those na ma-re-assign natin sa NPC program, then these areas should first be subjected to competitive selection process. But should it further entail failure of the bidding, then NPC SPAG must be the one to implement the rural electrification program for those particular areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Boss Mario. For our third question,
Section 19.
Yes, sir. I think you already discussed po yung under Section 19, which is the subsidy.
Yeah. Yeah, kasama ang NPC rito. Pagka open discussion po ang mangyayari dito pagdating sa harmonization ng subsidy. Since this will be a policy, all concerned sectors will be included po during the deliberation. The major entities like NPC, NEA, DOE, we will most likely have a focus group discussion first, identify the areas and the actual consumers that should be eligible for the subsidy. Then we have to identify saan magagaling yung subsidy. Then such policy will also be subjected to public consultation. Thank you.
Thank you, Boss Mario. So yun po yung response natin with regards to discussions about the Section 19 of the DC, which refers din po sa subsidy ng ating provisions with regards sa QTP implementation. So we have our fourth questions. We have from NPC again, should come up with a policy if there will be no takers of DU or NPC conduct of CSP. So which group will undertake the electrification of these unviable areas considering government has limited resources? NPC as last resort may be possible if this will be funded by government capex subsidy or SARO. I think, Boss Mario, the question is about dun po sa kung nagkaroon ng failure na about yung bidding, even the NPC have conducted the CSP. So,
Yeah. Yeah, our DC has already indicated that, or reiterated that NTC will be our last resort, and of course, the government has to provide, no, to provide for this, for the implementation of the appropriate electrification solution to this area. Kasama na yan, Boss Rene, sa discussions natin on subsidy. That should those areas be considered as unviable even for the private sector alternative service providers, then what funding for the electrification of program, particularly the source, should be identified. So it could be in the form of subsidy or directly funding for NPC's funds. Thank you.
thank you, Boss Mario.
Mark, if I may.
Yeah. Yes, Boss
Yes, Sir
Rene.
Rene.
Yeah. Actually, this is a challenge for us, because we have target for the total electrification.
Yep.
And our program for this QTP, very tight kasi yung schedule natin. So, there's a possible, plus the fact that we have very limited players, QTP players right now, plus the pandemic. So, with the limited time, it is possible na there will be no takers from the DU CSP or from NPC CSP. So if there will be no takers, government has to come up with a policy on how to electrify these areas, considering the total electrification program of government. Right now, DBM is limiting also their allocation for NPC. So actually, this is a challenge. Kaya ito, I think this was also raised in few meetings before, na pag walang may kumuha, it will be a big challenge for government kung paano gagawin ito. That's the reason why we are having this QTP, para meron tayong partner in developing these areas, di ba? But if there will be no partners, private partners, then it will be a big challenge for government. That's all, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, Boss Rene. We do recognize that, and as has been indicated earlier, aside from time, aside from time, and the needed funds for electrification to be done by NPC or the government, then we need money. Nagkaroon lang siya ng additional challenge ngayon because of this current health pandemic. But definitely, once all the, sabihin natin, yung government initiatives are consolidated, and I believe the IATF is a major player in this, and it will be a big balancing act for the government whether to push through with various electrification, but that will be included in the different yung infrastructure requirement ng national government. It will be a big challenge in terms of balancing where to go for the government. But I firmly believe that there are supporters, or we will get enormous support in providing these services to our rural areas, dahil nga doon sa nabanggit ko kanina, yung Balik Eskwela at saka yung Balik Probinsya program. So kung hindi natin matutuloy, malaki kasi ang impluensya ng electrification to these two programs of the government. And I believe, my personal belief, which naman ang galing din sa ating mga officials, na while it may be difficult for the government, then the decision has to be made kung paano natin isusupport yung mga ganitong inisyatiba rin, yung Balik Probinsya at Balik Eskwela. And definitely, the target is rural electrification. We will update you, and the policies will come directly from, sabihin natin, sa mga official natin. Thank you.
Thank you, Boss Mario and Sir Rene. For our next question, yung nag-raise na po ng hand si Sir Rene Gilagutan. Sir Rene, will address your concern after we concluded ito pong lahat ng nabanggit na mga tanong dito po sa ating chat window. So for our next question from Paleco, from Mr. Ferdinand Pantillas, how do we address Filipina Shell Foundation Incorporated or FPISI's concern? They have electrified remote areas through their CSR program. It is a non-profit and can be taken as a grant. They ask our help to register their projects in DOE. I think ito po yung mga efforts, CSR electrification projects as implemented by PFSI or Philippine Shell Foundation. So I think yung concern ba natin is with regard sa registration as a QTP or ito po ba is in terms of application for our service contracts such as for the RE. So Boss Mario, I think yung concern nila is about two things. I think kung ito ba ay mare-register under a QTP or ito ba ay will be considered as a grant or they are applying for a service contract with our RESC.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. No, I think it's a very good question coming from Paleco. Then, of course, being one of the areas na meron nga nito mga CSR program, kino-consolidate natin ang ating pong total electrification master plan. And the first thing that we need, together po doon sa mga ginawa namin doon sa ating EU ASEP program, is the recognition and ownership of the distribution utility. Kasi hanggat wala pong recognition yung ating mga distribution utility, particularly the ownership of it, then hindi natin maa-account itong mga CSR program na to. And syempre sa programa natin, even if we recognize that we have this CSR program, hindi natin sila nare-register yung mga communities as energized. Yan po yung number one. So ngayon, ang mangyayari po niyan, kung talagang may mga ganitong programa, ang kailangan po nating ma-identify is sino ba talaga yung grantee at sino po yung mga beneficiaries. In that way, kung magkakaroon po ng ownership, whether the LGU or the electric cooperative, para maisama natin siya sa total electrification plan. Then, ang mangyayari po dyan is either si Pilipinas Shell po ay papasok as QTP or ang mag-i-implement na dyan ay mismong CDU or CEC. And that's how we did with the EU ASEP program. There were call for proposals that were approved for funding by the European Community, European Union. And part of these, the call for proposal projects include provision of electricity services either through microgrid like run-of-river system or solar home system. So ang ginawa po namin doon is kailangan i-coordinate yan at magkaroon ng ownership CDU. Kasi pag nagkaroon ng ownership CDU, ililista na ng CDU na energized ng community. So magiging actual beneficiary po niyan direct is the DU. So that means ang talaga pong sinasabi natin dito, even this CSR program should be coordinated with the distribution utility so that we can now identify which areas ang talagang hindi pa energized at which area should be included in our total electrification master plan. And I believe that's the only way that we can have these projects duly recognized not only by the DOE but all entities na kino-consider na energized ng community. Now, as far as registration naman po, pagdating doon sa, sabi natin, kung kailangan po renewable energy service contract dahil gumamit sila ng indigenous renewable energy, may bago na pong guidelines ang Renewable Energy Management Bureau. Sumusunod po yun doon sa rules and regulation po natin under the Energy Virtual One-Stop Shop. So, facilitated po yung mga ganitong rural electrification program using renewable energy pagdating po sa issuance ng service contract. And depending on the magnitude po, sometimes what is needed, lalo na po kung ang magiging beneficiary natin is the DO itself, then it's for own use. Sa halip po na service contract, magiging registration na lang siya. It's proper documentation lang po kung paano natin i-handle yung project. So to summarize po, Philippine Shell as part of CSR should coordinate directly with the DU. The DU should be able now to identify and register these communities as energized. And then matatanggal na po siya doon sa ating mga energized communities. So hindi nyo na kailangan i-waive, si DU ang mag-ooperate. Now, kung hindi naman mag-ooperate si DU, then i-waive ni DU, and since nandiyan na yung project, then we have to clarify that with our legal services kung pwede ba maging automatic na QTP si Philippine Shell. Kaya lang, ang may understanding po si Philippine Shell, ano lang yan mag-i-install lang tapos binibigay na sa community. So, yun ho ang pwede maging challenge natin. But the best way is for the DU to accept and register those areas as energized. Thank you very much po.
Thank you, Boss Mario.
Thank you, sir.
For our next questions, again from NPC, follow up. I think it's a follow-through question. So, given yung kayo na about sa subsidy concern, so the DC 2019-11-15 can be implemented after the subsidy is resolved by the DOE.
Yes, Boss Mark. Yes, our target for the guidelines na doon sa policy natin for harmonization is within the year. So by the time na meron na tayong mga bagong QTP, hopefully the harmonized subsidy program is already in place. So dapat talaga mauna recognize po. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you again, Boss Mario. Our next question is from Nea. On page 7 on the section 11 responsibilities of the QTP states that the QTP may apply for to the Congress for an electricity distribution facility franchise and may be clarified on the statement. May apply to Congress for an electricity distribution franchise would mean that securing franchise from the Congress is optional, or would this simply rather mean that QTP has to secure franchise once it has passed all the bidding requirements and or prior to execution of QTP service contract? Thank you. I think I can respond to this, Director Mario. The statement provides po that the QTP may apply. Given po na si Congress po ang may authority to grant a franchise, the QTP, after it has been selected under the QTP CSP process, they may apply. Given po na yung pong implementation or yung operation ng QTP po natin is on a specific term lang po. It can be a 10 to 20-year contract, and after the term has or the service contract has been concluded, it will be reverted back to the concerned DU who has the franchise over the unviable area. So, mayroon din provision under the service contract that it can be further extended, pero subject na po ito dun sa determination kung ito po ay kailangang CSP or ito ba is another extension. Pero, yun po, it is an option from a QTP player once it has granted the QTP service contract to apply for a Congress for the distribution franchise para po after the termination of the service contract, if the Congress will grant a franchise to them, they will be the implementer or the distribution utility in the said area po for continuity of the operation in the said area. Ayun po, yun po yung response natin to that question. Another question from scroll down please. We have from Biselco. I think this is related to our recent communications. Is Swiss challenge an acceptable method under the QTP service competitive selection process? Boss Mario or our principals use Conesa as a cred for this purpose?
If I may, Mark, Boss Mark. Well,
yes,
duly recognized po ang Swiss challenge from CSP. But at the moment, we are still, or the DOE management, still working on the policies to include Swiss challenge as part of our competitive selection process. So as far as QTP is concerned, And since much of the wording po natin doon sa ating department circular is direct competitive bidding, then hindi pa po kasali sa ngayon unless magkaroon po ng panibagong policy ang DOE. So sa ngayon po, ang ina-encourage natin ay yung open and competitive selection process. Thank you.
Hello, Mar.
Yes, sir.
I think,
Yusek, yes,
please.
please.
Okay, thank you. Now, I have to rejoin to the reply of Director Mar. Yeah, that's true. Presently, we don't have yet the guidelines for Swiss challenge, and DOE is working on it, not specifically for the QTP application, but rather on the other CSP DCs, which is 2018 series. 2018 series. So we are not saying that a Swiss challenge will be excluded, but rather we don't have yet the guidelines, and we're working on that. So that means we go by the CSP as laid out sa DC 2019 natin sa QTP. Maraming salamat.
Thank you po, Yusek, for the additional inputs po. Okay, so we still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more questions po from Paleco. We have from Bisalco again. Why is DU not allowed to participate in qualified third party or as a QTP? Boss Mario, I will just answer in few comments, pero you may add po on this. The reason
Yes,
why the
please.
QTP, the DU is not allowed to participate as a QTP in there's advisable areas because in the first place, DU has the mandate to provide universal service over its franchise, including the unviable area. So given the presentation I have made earlier, it's the DU who has first the obligation. Then if they cannot provide electricity service in the said area, they have the option to endorse it or to have the adjoining DU to energize it. Then pag po hindi pa rin yung adjoining DU to be able to energize yung unviable area, it's the time na kumbaga yung qualified third party or yung private sector na natin yung magpa-participate po dito as a QTP. So yung pong siguro the DU may serve as a QTP pero hindi po doon sa franchise area niya. If they have the financial capability, technical capability, and all also the legal document that will support or will qualify them as a QTP outside its franchise area po. So yun po yung sigurong initial response ko on this question. Boss Mario, you may add, or Attorney Mai may add as well.
Okay na, Boss Mark. Thank you.
Okay, thank you po. Our next question is from Paleco. What is the extent of the DOE authority on TOR of CSP? And second is, can the DOE insist on what TOR should the DU use? Boss Mario and Attorney Mai, or you second Arid, response on this?
Yeah, thank you for that question po. As far as the terms of reference is concerned, wala pong direct supervision ang DOE pagdating sa TOR for QTP. Kaya po ang ginawa natin is template, particularly yung ating QSC. So you can more or less tailor fit dun sa QSC natin how to produce your terms of reference. We count on the National Electrification Administration po to supervise our ECs based na ho dun sa policy natin na dapat technology neutral, dapat po merong fairness, hindi limiting yung mga terms natin, yung mga provisions ng ating terms premises. So ang sinasabi lang po natin is to open up the terms of reference to all possible QTP participants. And DOE will be working with NEA on how to achieve this, with NEA directly overseeing as what our DC says, NEA is the one directly overseeing the conduct of the competitive selection process for QTP. Thank you very much, po.
Thank you, Boss Mario, for that response. Okay, so our next question, I think related yung two consecutive questions by Samselco under by Engineer Baco. We have 5 island barangays proposed for QTP. In our case, the NPC already constructed the generating facilities. Are they allowed to conduct the CSP for QTP? And second, the same concern 5 island. Does it mean we need to conduct the CSP separately? Sige po. Busmar?
Yeah. For this case ng 5 islands, we may have to consult this with NPC PAG. Kasi NPC would, I believe that NPC and Boss Rene, please clarify this. Kaya nag-provide ng generating facilities ang NPC PAG. Supposedly, meron kayong agreement, do you have an agreement with Samselco on the provision of the distribution line? Kasi yun ang issue. As far as QTP is concerned kasi, dapat from supply to distribution. So, meron dapat basis si NPC PAG why this generating facilities will installed in these 5 islands. So, may I request Boss Rene for some clarification on the generating facilities installed on the 5 islands of within the franchise area of Samselco. Thank you. Boss Rene.
Yeah, Director Mar, with regards to Zamboanga, we have already constructed our power plant facility for the 5 islands. And the distribution line is supposed to be provided by the electric cooperative. However, I think they have some problems with regards to funding coming from NEA. So I don't know what happened now on their distribution lines. But with regards to the question on the QTP for these areas, I think NPC is open for these areas. Once we have completed the area, the construction, the operation, at a certain point, we could actually offer this for QTP, particularly if the subsidy will be resolved later this year by the DOE. I think NPC can implement this kind of policy also, not only for Zamboanga, but for other areas that is being handled by NPC. If there will be QTP interested to take over those areas, we are open to transfer it to the private sector. That's all.
Thank you, Boss Rene.
Okay. Yes po. Thank you for that response, Boss Mario and Sir Rene from NPC. So we have a follow-up question again from Samselco. In QSC, qualified third-party service contract, are there mentioned the minimum terms of contract? Yes, there will be a specific number of years, but this can be further clarified by Attorney Mai, I guess. Mai?
Hi Mark. For the question, yung in-issue po na template ng DOE ay containing only the minimum provisions. Ang sinabi ko kanina is nothing prevents the parties from adding or highlighting or supplementing these minimum provisions. Kasi kayo yung nakakaalam kung ano pa yung mga safeguards ninyo na pwede nyo ipasok in the contract. So, pag nagda-draft na kayo yan at consider yung mga minimum provisions, it's up to you to modify, to expand it. And pag na-finalize nyo na yan, nandyan ay hindi lang yan minimum. So, it is a comprehensive QSC na mag-govern sa rules and policies, sa rules and regulations on how to go about the implementation of the QTP. So yung sa amin guide lang po yon. So nasa parties po kasi the DOE is no longer part of this QSC. So discretion po ng parties to add. Yun lang ang ano natin is it must be consistent with the circular as well as the other related provisions other related issuances, and of course, the IPIRA. Yun na po.
Thank you, Attorney Mai, for that response po. Okay, so we still have around 4 questions from NPC again. Question, it is not clear when CSP is conducted the capacity requirement of the X years. Would it include the future requirement or additional capacity requirement, or another CSP will be conducted for future capacity requirement on the specific area? Boss
If
Mark?
I may, Boss Mark.
Yes, po.
It would be ideal for the EC or NPC fund to make projections on the development of the particular area, yung wave area natin. Kasi, for example, in Sabang, no, yun yung isa sa mga nakikita namin, the viability of operating the Sabang QTP does not rest on the household alone. But actually, ang nakita nila is yung socio-economic development within that particular area dun sa Sabang. And that looks for the possibilities of having resort development for tourism purposes. Kaya mas magiging So, ang ginawa na ni Sabang ngayon is not directly related doon sa mga household. They merely target the minimum number of households where they can start, but their projection already includes what will happen or what would be the socio-economic development in the area. And of course, kung sino po yung DU, EC, or NPC fund in this particular case, they can make or they can base their terms of reference, the provisions of the terms of reference, based on their projection on the development of the area. Para isang bidding na lang yan. Please remember that we're looking at 20-year cooperation agreement between the EC and the QTP participants. I mean EC or NPC with the QTP participants. It's not for 5 years or 10 years. So projections are very much welcome as part of the terms of reference. Thank you.
Sir Mark, if I may. Sir Mark?
Yes po, Sir Rene.
Can I respond to that? Yeah, with regards to Sabang, actually ganito Mario, Director Mario. We have some problem with regards to yung mga expansion ng QTP. Take the example of one of our existing QTP, wherein their contract, actually, their PSA, is although the life of the project is around 10 years, the capacity under the PSA is around X kilowatt. Let's say, for example, around 200 kilowatt. But during the 10-year period of the operation, there will be capacity addition requirement. Ibig sabihin, hindi lang kasi 200 kilowatt for 10 years lang naman yun eh. The 10 years is the life of the contract. But the capacity, it might be reached by the demand at a certain years. So the question is, pag nag-put up si QTP ng additional capacity, it is not anymore covered by the PSA of the QTP, which is approved by ERC. So they have to go back to ERC with that. And the rates, might change. It could go down, it could go up. So I think that should be very clear sana dito sa policy na to sa QTP. Kasi that's our experience right now in one of the QTP. Like yung Sabang, baka ganun din mangyari dyan kasi Sabang, if they will, if they will be able to meet all the demand, their capacity might be not enough at a certain period of time, which is before the lifetime of the PSA. So basically, that's the question. Ano bang gagawin? Should we conduct another CSP for the area, for the same area, or the QTP will just have to go back to ERC to apply for another rate increase or decrease for that? Yun lang, sir.
Thank you, boss. Thank you, boss, for the questions. If I may, boss Mark. Yeah. Actually, tama po kayo dun sa ano, and I would not recommend to do another CSP kasi standing pa naman yung ating QTP participants. Rather, I would recommend that sa terms of reference natin should provide provisions for amendment, particularly should there be increase in the demand. Kasi demand lang naman yung nagbago eh. And then also to be included in the terms of preference is also the corresponding filings ni QTP participants with ERC on any revision doon sa kanilang doon sa inyong QSC and also to the FCRR kung kinakailangan. No? Kasi pwede rin naman na ang sabihin nila, no change in price but we can increase the supply unless ang sinasabi natin is we look at it differently. So ang ini-encourage ko rito personally, no, I would say na let's put some provisions in the terms of preference that will provide for adjustment should there be increase in the demand. Kasi tinitingnan lang natin dito, as you have mentioned, is the increase in demand. The difference, the other way is if they would want to expand the coverage of their QTP service area. That is totally different from merely increasing the demand. And if that means increase in their service area, then I believe that should be covered by another CSP kasi different area na yan. So what I'm saying is, if it is the same area, the same consumers, but with increasing demand, then the terms of preference should allow for amendments and revisions of not only QSC, but also filings with the IC. Thank you.
Thank you, Boss Mar.
Mark.
Yes po, Yusek.
Yeah, I'd like to say something about this. Now, the statement of Director Mario is precisely a prudent way of doing business because that would really encourage, and motivate our potential private investors, the QTP, in those in the area, on the context that should the area be expanded from the previous or the present QTP area granted to the QTP provider, then it should go for another CSP. So meaning we protect, the at present we protect, and we indeed encourage private investors to come in because of that provision as stated by Director Mario in the TOR. Thank you.
Thank you po, Yusek, for that additional input. So we move on to our next question from Association of Visayas Electric Cooperative from Mr. Virgilio Fortich. On the tariff structure, will the procuring DU establish and made as part of the bid document its estimate FCRR as basis for the bidders to compete? If so, what will be the basis of the procuring DU in evaluating the FCRR of the bidder? Also, without the FCRR ceiling provided by the DU, will result in arbitrary offer of FCRR from the bidders to the prejudice of the consumer. Better as well to provide the guidelines in the computation of the FCRR, though I understand that the ERC will review and evaluate after the execution of the QSC. Thus, it is logical for the procuring DU to set the FCRR as basis for the bid aside from the other requirements. Boss Mar, Attorney Mai, Yusek, Aled.
Yes, if I may, Boss Mark. Thank you po for the question. Yes, as indicated na rin po ni Attorney Mai, minimum lang yung minimum parameters yung provide namin sa QSC. So it's up for the DU to establish additional provisions dun sa QSC nila where they should base their terms of reference, including the possibilities of having a ceiling for FCRR. So, yes, I believe that the DU would be in a better position than anybody else since it's their franchise area that they are going to enter enter into cooperation agreement with sector, then to protect as well the consumer, if the DU or the EC will opt to provide a ceiling for the FCRR, then as long as po na makakakuha tayo ng maraming participants, then we welcome po yung mga ganong provisions sa ating terms of reference. Ang i-emphasize lang po natin dito is we should be able to invite as many QTP proponents as we can. Dahil alam po natin sila na sila yung makakatulong sa atin over a cooperation period para lang ma-achieve natin yung total electrification. Kung masyado namang limiting yung ating mga terms of reference, baka mangyari niyan is na-waive natin yung area, subject natin sa competitive selection process, but because of our very limiting terms of reference, walang private sector na pumasok. Then, our consumer will be at the disadvantage kasi i-reprogram ulit natin yung electrification for that particular area. As I mentioned earlier po, and as indicated by Atty. May, any parameters po that would help the DU in achieving the target for QTP program, welcome po sa Department of Energy yan. Marami pong salamat.
Thank you, Boss Mar. So, for our next question from Anteco, can we have a copy of the series of questions and answer? This is to catch up in case where the internet connection was. Yes, definitely we can provide as well the copy of the presentation and also the copy of this recording para for our future references, and also pwede nating balikan ano yung mga naging point of discussions. Second question is from Sebeco 2 from Engineer Dominador M. Binghay. How long does a QTP for term of service contract to operate for indicative rate base or commercial operation? Attorney Mike, can we expound this po?
Thank you, Mark. With respect to term, we did not specify the period or the number of years. Kasi po, ang nakakaalam po is yung DU concern, kung ano po yung contract or yung service na kailangan ninyo, kung by the time ba ng engagement period ay hindi pa rin kaya ng DU to provide the services. So, nasa inyo po yun. Based on the plan that you have, yung sa missionary plan ninyo, kung hindi para, considering also the financial condition of the DU, the technical capability, and everything. So, kayo po yung nakakaalam. You are in the best position to determine the contract period, kung saan kayo po pwede na mag-take over or pwede na i-ano sa inyo ang kayo na yung mag-ooperate. So, we really cannot dictate that because this is on a case-to-case basis, and kayo po yung nakakaalam of all the technical, the financial conditions of your DU as well as of the requirement for the electrification in your community. So we submit po dun sa portion na yun.
Thank you, Attorney Mai, for that response po with regards to QTP term of service contract. Next question from Sebeco 1 from Mr. Jigs Novak Negapatan. Based on the DOE responsibilities, declare or unviable underserved areas which are not identified and endorsed by the DU as the QTP service areas and are nominated by the QTP proponent. May we know who are those qualified as QTP proponents? Siguro clarify ko po with regards sa QTP proponent, it's the DOE first who will declare the unviable, unserved, and underserved areas based from their distribution development plans, from other supporting documents such as yung total electrification master plan ng concerned DUs. From there, we can further evaluate the said areas with the concerned DU as well as the National Electrification Administration for the validation of the said area or said unviable, unserved area or underserved area can be declared as a QTP service area. For those areas, kung hindi po kasama dito sa listahan na to and may ni-nominate si QTP proponent, the DOE will still process it the same way as yung sa unidentified bayad sa DDP, sa master plan nila. We will coordinate with the concerned DU as well as NEA to validate if the said nominated area can be declared as a QTP service area. As to who will be the QTP proponent, well, yun po yung nabanggit kanina na after we have declared a QTP, they will have to qualify first with the three qualification. Una is yung legal documents, yung financial capability nila, at saka po yung technical eligibility. So meron po tayong sinet na eligibility requirements to qualify sino po yung mga QTP proponents. So yung pong nabanggit nyo with regards sa identification, then anyone can nominate po for the potential areas for QTP service areas. But eventually, after they have formally endorsed it to the DOE, we have to validate first with the concerned DO as well as our attached agencies, NEA and NPC, if the said areas are ready for declaration as the QTP service area. Ayun. So, I think we have our last question, but since Sir Rene Fajilagutan from the Association of Island Electric Cooperatives is our first participant to raise his hand. After I read my question, Sir Rene, you may also further expound it or provide your comments after I have read this. The provision of electricity to unenergized areas should be grounded to economic development in mind, which means should support the growth of industrial or commercial consumers and not only energizing the household. These industrials or commercial establishments generates employment, which eventually increase the paying capacities of the locals. Phasing out the rationalizing the provision of UCME will defeat the purpose of rural development. Sir Rene, you are recognized, so you may expound further the statement you have provided po.
Yes, good morning to everyone, especially to our USEC, Director Mario, and all the GMs that are present today. Yes, actually, we are apprehensive about this rationalization of and removal of UCB, no? So sabi nga natin dito, ito nga mga tinatarget natin na energize nating mga consumers ay ito na nga sila nahuli. Nahuli sila magkakaroon ng kuryente tapos eventually pagbabayaran pa natin sila ng true cost of generation, which is a very cruel to our to the new consumers. Ang pagkakaalam po namin dito, DUCME is kumbaga sa part and parcel yan ng ating missionary electrification. Kaya po merong UCME because there is missionary electrification. Nandun po yan sa batas, alam po natin lahat yan. Ngayon, yung alam natin na yung kung halimbawa tanggalin natin yung subsidy sa ating mga industrial at commercial consumers, sila po ito nagbibigay ng employment eh. Sila po nagbibigay ng kabuhayan sa ating mga maliliit na kababayan sa mga liblib na po. Eh kung tatanggalin po natin yung support sa kanilang operation, their cost might very expensive, which their product would become very incompetitive to the market. At alam natin eventually yung mangyayari. So, ang pagkakalam po namin din dito, magkakaroon lang po ng graduation sa subsidy if the area should be connected to the transmission system. Andyan po yan sa Rule 13, Section 5, letter C. Yung missionary electrification function ng NPC. Although sa ngayon, might be hindi na NPC yung provide ng kuryente sa liblib na po, but they are the delegated areas of NPC. So they are still entitled to that sa UCME. At yun po, ang masasabi ko lang, nung nagkakaroon po tayo ng public consultation, we all know that this UCME is still there. Mahihirapan po tayo na mag-invite ng QTP kung sakali man na wala na itong subsidy. Dahil alam nila yung case ng negosyo, magiging resulta ng case ng negosyo kung wala nang subsidiya. Yung ko naman yung economics of yung economics naman ng operation, depende po yan sa sa sales. So kung hindi na kaya ng tao na bumili ng kuryente, yung growth po, siyempre matitame po yun. At yung economics po ng operation ng ating mga QTPs ay eventually din po ay siguro hindi na magiging attractive to them. Yung ang dati nating QTP guidelines, yung DC 2005-2012-11, more than 900 po ang winave ng ating mga electric cooperatives. Pero ngayon, ilan pa lang po yun, wala pa yatang 20 no, naging operational yung ating mga QTP. So how much more ito na wala na pong subsidiya? May alam nga po ako na napabalita nga po natin na yung isa pong ating QTP doon sa Palawan ay umayaw na yata dahil hindi na nabibigyan ng subsidiya. How much more itong mga bago? So I don't know kung itong bagong support sa ating off-grid area na subsidy support, no, aside from UCME will become successful. Kami po ay naniniwala na itong UCME po na naging institutionalized na po natin for so many years, ay ito na po ang pinaka-effective na support sa electrification ng off-grid areas. Kung paano po mabababa, it is, I think, a new policy direction for all of us. Ngayon po, alam po natin na yung hindi po bumababa yung ating demand sa off-grid areas. At ang kasalukuyan po nating default of generation is a diesel power plant. Ang napakamahal po yun. Hindi po maubos hindi po bababa talaga yung presyo ng diesel. So, yun po ang isa naming apprehension dito. At saka, isa pang kinatatakutan dito ay, yun nga, alam natin na sa off-grid electrification, yung power generation po ang pinakamataas na cost. Umabot po yan ng mga 28 pesos per kilowatt hour. How much more sa napakaliit? The remaining isolated islands or isolated grids na hindi nailawan ngayon are very tiny communities. 200, 100 communities. Yun po ang target natin ngayon. So yun lang po ang na-observe namin sa lumabas na circular ng ating QTP na nagulat nga po kami bakit nawala po yung subsidiya. So yun lang po, Direk Mar at Yusek Manesa, yung apprehension po namin. Maraming salamat po.
If I may, Boss Mark.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for your question, clarification, Sir Rene, no? But I believe that your concerns will be better addressed in a different forum rather than this QTP. Kasi when we do start the discussions on the rationalization of subsidies in off-grid areas or missionary areas, then that would be more appropriate opportunity for us to explain and further clarify yung mga concerns like this. Now, to give you some explanation or sabihin natin, initial concept, no? The rationalization of subsidy does not mean that total removal of the subsidy. Please remember that QCME is not really a subsidy program that are being given to our off-grid areas at no cost to the other consumers. So the more subsidy in terms of QCME that we provide, it also costs the more for our on-grid users. Kasi cross-subsidy po yan. So while we are providing appropriate or sufficient subsidy dun sa mga off-grid areas natin, at cost naman po yung nangyayari sa ating mga on-grid users. Kasi kung sabihin na po natin na hindi man lumaki yung ating UCME rate, mag-stagnant man siya sa isang rate, pero lumalaki naman yung demand. So that increase in demand will now entail a bigger cross-subsidy coming from our other consumers from the on-grid. And also, please remember that our on-grid consumers are not only the consumers who can really afford the cost of electricity in on-grid areas. We have also the urban poor, which are being served by the grid, and they are also providing part of the UCME based on their consumption. So it is a balancing act that we are doing when we use the term rationalization. And rationalization does not totally mean removal. Ang sinasabi lang po natin, if it is the appropriate opportunity for us to discuss this, is we have to identify sino-sino talaga yung dapat bigyan ng subsidy. We are not limiting it to households. Sasabihin natin how much would be the appropriate subsidy, and then saan po natin kukunin yung subsidy. Kasama, of course, sa consideration is the continuation of getting it from the on-grid users. But we are not solely looking now at UCMA alone. We are also looking at other possible sources. Now, you mentioned also the industrialization or commercialization of off-grid areas. Well, very timely po yung inyong comment kasi that's one of the newest direction that were given to us, particularly to the Power Bureau working in off-grid areas, na hindi na po kami household lang ang tinitingnan in terms of electrification. Nagkakaroon na po tayo ng konting parang segue in terms of electrification, particularly in off-grid areas, not to look at the household consumption alone, but also on the potential demands that will be brought about by industrialization or commercialization of off-grid areas. So we will be conducting various activities, including Power Summit. We have started it before. We have revived the conduct of the Power Summit to identify ano ang mga potential increase in demand in and off-grid areas and what are the potentials of uplifting the socio-economic development of off-grid areas. In that sense po, we are making a repo concept for off-grid areas, not limiting our target for energization, ang household, but also the initiatives of our local government units in making off-grid areas as far as an industry or a commercial entity, including po yung pagtatayo ng mga eco-zones. So kasama na po siya sa ating magiging total electrification program. So para medyo magaan na naman ang loob ng ating mga kasamahan sa mga off-grid areas, particularly the leadership of Mr. GM Rene Pahilagutan. I have known you for a long time and I know your cause. So we will be addressing your particular cause in due time. Thank you very much po at magandang umaga.
Direk Mar, maraming salamat po sa paliwanag.
Okay. Thank you po for that input. We have next for his question, we also have a follow-up from Engineer Baco from Celco. Engineer Baco, you're recognized po. So if Engineer Baco is not yet ready for his further questions, I recognize Mr. Virgilio Fortich of the Association of Visayas Electric Cooperative.
Yes, again, good noon. Just a clarificatory question because ito yung understanding ko as far as QTP is concerned. With regards to the waiver of any franchise area, kasi tingin ko may misinterpretation eh. Yung understanding ko, in QTP, there is no such thing as a waiver of a franchise area, but only a waiver of services in that part of the franchise area. This is why, this is the reason why the QTP shall apply with the ERC for the issuance of the authority to operate. Am I right for that understanding, Sir Mark?
Yes po, sir.
If I may,
The
Mark?
reason we have... Ay, sige po, Boss Mark.
Yeah. Sorry. Sir, yung tanong ninyo, yes, hindi po natin wini-waive yung ating franchise area. Kaya nga po yung ating QTP service contract is between the DU and the QTP participants. And it is, a better term nga po ginagamit natin is cooperation period. Hindi po kasama sa pag-waive yung franchise area. It's only the services. Tama po kayo.
Yes, sir.
Salamat
Thank
po.
you.
Mark, excuse me, pakasunod mo ako.
Yes po, Sir Peng. Sir Virgilio, yun lang po ba yung question natin or may kasunod pa po yun?
Okay na yun, okay na yun. Okay na yun.
Okay po. Sige po, sir. Thank you po. Balikan ko lang po si Engineer Basco of Samselco. Engineer Basco, are you there na po? If not, if wala pa din po, we'll have Sir Rafael Abergas of NPC. Sir Paeng.
Sir, good afternoon to all. Meron akong clarification regarding the entry. NPC, sabi niyo, ang last resort sa gagawa ng electrification. Yung mga existing namin, saka nakaprograma, gagawin namin. Kailan kami papasok ulit na kami ang gagawa pagka wala na yung electric cooperatives at saka yung DU, ay saka yung NEA na magpabid for CSP. Hindi nabanggit sa timeline kasi.
Boss Pae, in response to your question, we can only identify yung additional function ng NPC as the last resort upon yung conduct ng mga CSP ng mga DU at kung magpe-fail yun. So that means on a yearly basis, saka pa lang natin kumbaga, yearly basis, magkakaroon tayo ng assessment. So, ang unang assessment natin is what are the wave areas? Ipapublish ni DOE yun, magkakonduct ng CSP. So, yung kung alin yung mapupunta sa NPC fund, it will come the following year. Hindi sa immediate current year. We have to complete the process muna if bago mag-proceed yung ano. And by that time, since merong ample time pa to prepare, then we can also identify what would be the potential sources of fund for NPC to implement the particular last resort action. Thank you.
Hindi kasi kasi up to 2021 meron pa kami nakaprograma. After 2021 baka wala na kami may program. Wala nang mapunta sa amin. So may lag time na mangyayari.
Hopefully na, sir. Kasi kung maumpisa natin ngayon, although may challenge tayo ngayon dahil as far as my recall, we have extended the submission ng ating distribution development plan until August 30 kasi nga naapektuhan tayo ng pandemic. But if we are able to collate na yung ating DDP, including dapat yung ating total electrification master plan and the list of wave areas for QTP, then that's the time pa lang na makakapag-start tayo. Magkakaroon talaga tayo ng lag time because of the pandemic and late submission of the DPP. Thank you.
On the term naman, sinasabi natin dito, effectivity date is yung upon signature, upon approval of the PSA or QSC by the ERC. And then COD will happen 6 months thereafter. Parang hindi yata mangyayari yung 6 months thereafter yung COD. Kasi walang bangko magpapautang hanggat hindi na-approve ng ERC yung rate. So, mangyayari pa yan 2 years thereafter, hindi 6 months thereafter.
As far as timeline, Boss Pae, yes. Susundan nating timeline 6 months pa yon. So hopefully na eksakto kung by 2021 meron pa kayong mga target. So magkakaroon kayo ng bagong target by 2022.
Sige. Hindi okay na ako doon, maliwanag na yan. Yun lang sa term. na sasabi
Yes, sir.
natin na effectivity date is 6 months, effectivity date is the approval of the ERC of the QSC. Di ba yon?
Yes, sir. Pero actually
tapos,
naman, ang approve lang na ERC doon yung FCRR eh.
Hindi, tama. Kaya lang tapos 6 months thereafter, dapat maka-COD na siya. Kaya lang,
Yep.
hindi walang bangkong magpapa-approve, mag-approve ng loan nila kung walang na rate. So yung 6 months, baka 2 years ang nasa isip natin.
Sige po. We have to further discuss that. Sige, para doon sa tamang timing. Yes, sir.
Yung signing kasi hindi natin sigurado. Kagaya nung yung kinalasag 1 year or 2 years ago yung in-apply pero ngayon lang nabigyan ng provisional acceptance. So hindi pa sila nagsisimula hanggang ngayon. Parang gano'n.
Yes, sir. Anyway, so we will have na lang po a discussion with NPC on especially those areas under yung last resort concept natin. For include para na rin sa
pero na general term yung yung 6 months after
yes,
effective date
including that.
On the naman
yes.
sa contracting yung joint venture participant wala pang approval ng SEC yun kasi mag-apply pa lang sila. So kasi kung pa-approve na natin sa second joint venture participant, maggastos sa kanila yun, wala namang guarantee na sila mananalo. Kaya dapat yung joint venture is just an agreement for them na sasali lang na tied yung kanila responsibilities nila. Pero wala pang approval ng government entities. Tama ba? Pwede ba yun?
Well, I may have to request yung legal opinion ni Attorney Maino. But for me kasi, part of qualification to enter into the CSP kasi you should be a legally existing entity na eh. So how can you be a legally existing entity kung wala ka pang pro forma na company? And
hindi,
then,
kasi karaniwan sasali.
Sige sir, ikaw muna.
Ang karaniwang sasali kasi mga joint venture na bago lang na foreign companies maghahanap ng local para makasali sila. Kaya yung financial requirements, yung experience, walang in their behalf. Hindi nila sa mga company nila na pinanggalingan. Kaya yung requirements natin na legal, financial, at saka experience, technical, hindi present sa kanila yung mga bagong joint venture. Kung unless otherwise gusto natin i-limit yung mga participants, hindi natin sila kailangan. Pero karaniwan, ganyan ang nangyayari. Wala pang joint venture na registered pagka sila sumali.
Well, we will revisit our rules po. Pero the way I see it kasi at the moment, unless Attorney Mike can provide additional guidelines, dapat yun nga, my understanding is legally existing na dapat yung company. Yes, please, Attorney Mai. Thank you.
Yes, if I may, Boss Mar, Sir Paeng, you're talking of a joint venture undertaking wherein the parties will agree that in the event that they will be awarded with the contract or they will be selected, they will file a joint venture corporation to that effect. Well, if in analogy, if we try to apply the rules on the procurement, the Government Procurement Act, it allows the acceptance of a joint venture undertaking provided that it is a condition prior to the award. So before the contract will be awarded to them, they will have to form a joint venture corporation, provided also that in the evaluation of the document, each of the joint partners will have to submit its own legal documents. Ibig sabihin kung ano yung mga legal documents, isa-isa silang magsasubmit. But as to the financial or the technical capability, either of the partners may have that capacity. So, yun lang po yung pagkagamit nun. Basta sa legal, dapat lahat ay legal capable. For the technical and financial, pwede joint kasi nga yun yung concept na mag-joint venture sila kasi yung isa may don't have that financial capacity, yung isa naman may only possess technical capacity. That could be arranged also it is allowed in the Government Procurement Reform Act. So it can be also allowed, but we will try also, if it's not clear in the policy, siguro we will also check onto that para may clear po na policy guidelines from the department on that matter in case there will be joint venture mga proponents po. But thank you po for the question.
Tama, kasi na sa procurement law, ito, pinapayagan yung joint venture undertaking lang. So wala pang registration. So siguro kung pwedeng masama sila, mas madami yung participant na nakukuha natin.
Oo, except for sir, for infrastructure, kasi ito, we have infra and we have service. So hybrid to eh. For infrastructure under the Government Procurement Act, joint venture corporation talaga ang requirement. But for goods and services, pwedeng undertaking. So we'll take into that kasi dito sa QTP, may infra component, meron ding services component. So it's a hybrid. So yun nga, it would be best siguro if the department can come up with a clear guidelines on this joint venture kung baka kasi merong mag-participate na joint venture proponent. Thank you po.
Okay. Thank you. That's all for me now. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Mai. Thank you, Director Mari and Sir Paeng for the questions and response. I think we still have additional inputs from our chat window from Paleco. Although ECs are not waiving the franchise, the QTP can apply for a franchise in the said area. Please clarify Section 11's last statement.
Yes, Boss Mark. If I may clarify lang po, yes po, it's an option of the QTP provider natin that if they wish to have a continuity doon sa kanilang QSC, then it is just an option for them to apply ng franchise sa Congress. And we will be naman po respecting the wisdom po ng whatever decision ng ating Congress in granting franchise. Thank you po.
Thank you, Boss Mar, for the input. We also have a follow-up question. Hello po?
Pwede pa ba ako?
Sir Paeng, tapusin ko lang itong 2 further questions po para at
Sige.
least
Thank you.
next level po. Thank you, Sir Paeng. So we have additional questions. I think it is related to sa na-mention kanina ni Boss Mar about yung current pandemic situation natin. From Nuseco, from Ms. Cheryl de Los Santos Tadia, how are we able to conduct bidding since we are facing pandemic? And also, do we have any guidelines as to proceeding of the virtual bidding? I think it's Attorney Mai who is the best position to respond on this question po.
Yes, with this pandemic, inaalaw na po ng ating Government Procurement Policy Board na yung virtual conduct of the bidding or pre-bid conference or any other processes, provided that the concerned DU or NPC must establish its own internal guidelines on how to conduct the matter para clear po yun kung ano yung susundan. But ang ano lang po is with respect to the submission of the bids, physical pa rin yung pagsasubmit, hindi pa rin din yung electronic kasi hindi pa tayo ganun ka-advance or wala pa tayong technical, hindi pa mature yung ating technical capacity on that. So we have pwede pong may mga reference materials po tayo like GPPV guidelines on how to conduct virtual processes ng procurement at it's just a guideline but pwede pong gumawa ng internal rules ang concerned DU or NPC or on how to conduct the virtual opening of bid or pre-bid conference. And for the department right now, in our procurement processes, we conduct na both physical and virtual po kasi due to the restrictions in coming up in gathering the people and everything po. So dapat lang may internal rules and procedure lang yung concern DU and NPC on how to conduct such process. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Mai. Sir Paeng, Before po kayo, i-recognize ko muna si Engineer Basco of Samselco. Engineer Basco? Engineer Basco, you are recognized. Bako pala po, Engineer Bako.
Yes po.
Naka-mute po ata kayo, sir. Yes. And Engineer Bako, naka-mute po ata kayo.
Ay, sorry.
Sir, if I may suggest, paki-off niyo yung audio ng iba niyong devices. Isang device lang ang i-open ninyo na i-unmute niyo.
Yan, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Maliin na po kayo.
Okay. Just using the computer of Sherman. Anyway, relative to my questions previously, Sir Mark, good morning to Yusek Vanessa and Director Mario. So as a background, actually the franchise area of Samsolco covering 98 barangays. Of those 98 barangays, we have 90 barangays on grid, and then we have also 8 barangays on off-grid. Now, for the 8 barangays, under of which is the 4 barangays under Sakol Island, and we have also the other 4 barangays which is previously energized by Amore. Okay. Now, the board and management opted to undergo QTP for the other actually 5 barangays, which is previously energized by Amore, because of the current situation or the current operation of the islander barangays. That is, we are losing actually. Statistically, the systems loss of the Sakol Island or the other 4 barangays is we have 23% systems loss. And then as to date, we have the 35% systems loss. And then we have a very low collection efficiency of that Sakol Island. That's the reason being that management and board opted to undergo the QTP for the other 4 barangays. Now, my question is that who will do the QTP? Because currently the NPC SPAG is already constructing the generating facilities. And then the second question is, do we need to conduct the CSP separately for the 5 island barangays? Hello? Hello, Sir Mark. Hello?
Yes, sir. We heard you. We heard you po.
Yes po. Yun po yung question ko, Sir Mark.
Yeah. Boss Mark, if I may.
Yes po, sir. Medyo malabo lang sa akin kayo na. Sige po.
Okay. Sir, bali ganito. As earlier clarified by NTC, supposedly they put up the generating facilities on those 5 island barangay based on the agreement of NTC Fund and Samselco that they will take charge of the generating facilities while Samselco will put up the distribution facilities.
Yes po.
Di ho ba? So
Tama po,
ngayon,
tama po.
we have to honor muna siguro yung ating agreement with NPC SPAG, coordinate with them and identify kung paano nga siya papasok sa QTP kasi mukhang indirectly hindi siya pasok dapat sa QTP kasi you signify that you will already provide the distribution facilities. It so happens lang that challenges came when, as per my understanding, the funding support coming from NEA did not come or at the moment ay hindi pa na-serve. Di
Yes
po ba?
po. Yes po.
So, ngayon,
Tama po yan,
so-
Sir Mar. Yes po. Go ahead po.
So, kung ganun po yung situation natin, siguro po, bago natin siya i-qualify na QTP, we have to coordinate muna among ourselves on what to do. Kasi parang hindi sufficient reason yung dati na natin nakaprograma for electrification and just because hindi naging available yung funds, then we have to resort to QTP. Otherwise po, ang mga questions na nakikita ko dyan is what will happen to the generating facilities of NTC? If the QTP provides its own generation to be viable, then what happens to the generation facilities of NTC? Second, if there are already available lines in the area and they will merely rehabilitate it, who owns the line?
Okay.
Di ba?
Now,
And, would
ganito
they be-
po. Yes po, Sir
Yes, sir.
Mario.
Sige po.
Ganito
po.
po yung nangyari. Actually, the board and management decided already that we have to undergo the QTP. That is for the we recognize po yung the NPC's bag already constructed the generating plants, but what will be undergo to QTP is the operation, maintenance, and then the construction of the distribution lines. Yun po yung tinitingnan po namin, Sir Mario.
Sige po, we will discuss it in a separate venue po kasi mukhang
Okay.
hindi yan yung talagang concept ng ating QTP. Kasi ang concept po natin ng QTP is for the QTP participants to provide all facilities from generation to distribution as part of their investment.
Okay, noted po.
Paano po nila marirecover lahat yon? Pero parang ang lumalabas dun sa inyo is parang operation agreement lang. They can make use of the NPC SPAG facilities. They can also make use of the some self-cost facilities. And then mag-ooperate lang sa
Actually,
area.
Sir Mario, wala pa po kaming na-construct na distribution lines doon. But on this QTP, yun yung gusto namin na sila na mag-construct, operate, and maintain the lines.
Sige po, pag-usapan po natin separately yan para tingnan po natin anong avenue po para pumasok siya talaga sa under QTP. Medyo meron po tayong kasi ang isa pong concern dyan talaga nating magiging that we have to resolve is what will happen to the NPC's generating facility. Kasi po, paano po kung makakita ng mas, sabihin natin, gusto nilang i-enhance yung facility ni NPC. Hindi sila yung may-ari ng NPC facility. So, yun po yung mga pwede kung gusto po nilang sabihin natin, hybridization with solar, with battery, o kaya naman na-identify nila na instead na distribution through line facilities ang gagawin nila, magpo-provide na lang sila ng mga solar home systems and then make the operation and maintenance of the solar home systems more efficient, make 24-hour service. Kasi it would be much cheaper than operating the genset and operating the So, we will open this up for a much clearer discussion para po ma-identify natin how to really provide it po. Otherwise,
sige po. Thank you.
Nakikita ko po ngayon is parang lang talaga Hindi po siya QTP but rather parang operation agreement between some telco and a third party.
Yes.
Yun lang po. And I think it's not the full concept po ng ating QTP.
Okay po.
Sige po.
Well noted po. Thank you po.
Thank you very much po.
Okay.
We'll now We'll take note po yung situation ninyo. Thank you very much po.
Thank you po, Boss Mar and Engineer Bacop Samselco. I think we have last question from Sir Paeng. Given the time, it's already 12:13 po.
Sige, maigsi lang. Pag-aralan nyo lang siguro yung close out, yung after the term, after the period. Kasi kung ibibigay ba sa co-op, ay bibigay ba sa DU o sa MPC, parang ang tingin ko hindi dapat ganun kasi mamumroblema tayo sa clean up kung mapupunta sa ating yung burden ng cleaning up the power plant after the term. Pag-aralan nyo lang kung alin ang mas maganda, kung bibigay ba o pabayaan na lang sa kanila.
Duly noted, Sir Paeng, will take note of that po, and then siguro as mentioned by Director Mario, will further discuss this implementation together with NEA and NPC para po maging smooth yung implementation ng QTP policy.
Okay, thank you.
I think we have last one question, pero ito, from Paleco po, before we totally end, kasi given po the time constraints, further questions can be submitted to us through our email address that will be provided later. Pero for now, we'll have a last question from Paleco under 6.1 of the DC, where the ERC can act on the DU's request for a transfer of an energized areas to another DU. Would it mean that the said transfer involved expansion of the franchise area of the transferee DU when the Congress approval?
If I may, Boss Mark,
Yes,
relative po
Boss
dun sa
Mario.
question, relative po dun sa question ng Paleco on the other DU providing the electricity service of another DU's franchise area, I believe po, hindi po yan yung pagdating na kino-cover natin yung franchise area again. Kaya lang po ang sinisik natin is approval ng ERC is yung mga cross provision of electricity services. And there are already several electric cooperatives that I am aware of that because of accessibility concern, mas madali pong mag-energize yung kapitbahay na DU kaysa sa dun sa actual na DU na may pag-aari ng franchise. Accessibility problems po yung naging concern. So, nangyayari po doon, meron pong agreement yung dalawang DU kung paano yung classing services, kung paano yung payment, sino yung mangongolekta ng consumers' bills, and then paano i-compensate yung nag-provide ng services. Yung pong proseso na yun po yung hinihingi natin ng approval kay ERC. As far as I remember po, yung una ko na-encounter na ganyan ay sa Negros. Between the distribution utility in San Carlos City and also Bacolod City. There is a community in between the two, hindi pagawa yung Trans Central Road at that time. So, it's a franchise area of San Carlos City, and yet, ang una nagbigay ng electricity services are those from Bacolod. So, this arrangement naman po ay inaalaw ng ERC. Meron pa rin pong mga ganitong cases, I think, in Nueva Ecija or Nueva Vizcaya. Thank you very much po. Wala po tayong pinag-uusapan na franchise dito. Thank you po.
Thank you, Boss Mario, for that response po to our last question. So, I'll give it back to Mau po for our program as well.
Thank you, Boss Mark. So, thank you all for your participation in the open forum and in this IEC. For those who have additional questions, clarifications, and concerns, you can still submit them through our email, which I think you can see on our screen. Nakikita ba? Or we'll flash it later po para you can be able to get the email address where you can send your questions. So, to formally close today's activity, may I now call on our beloved and supportive Assistant Secretary, ASEC Redentor de Lola. A virtual round of applause po for ASEC Red.
Thank you, Mau. Um, this won't be long, no? I'm gonna keep it very short because I don't want to stand between you and lunch. Again, on behalf of the Department of Energy, I'd like to thank everybody for participating in this IEC. We hope that we've addressed some of your questions or your queries and your concerns, and hopefully, if you still have something on mind, you'll be open to share it with us by emailing the department to the email address provided. Again, maraming salamat po sa lahat. This is just one of the things that we need to do to ensure that we provide our consumers the services that they need, no? Especially in the areas that are remaining unserved up until now. There are things that we still need to do moving forward. There are a lot of things that we need to accomplish pa. As covered in the discussions, there might be some policies or some clarifications that we still need to issue to be able to really proceed, no, with providing the reliable, safe, secured, and affordable supply to everybody. As raised by Romelco earlier, by GM Rene, our goal extends beyond the household electrification. In fact, we have to take two steps further pa, no, to include commercialization and industrialization, because if we only rest on providing electricity to our households, eventually these households will not be able to sustain, no, paying for the electricity services. And we've seen that. We've seen that historically, a lot of households, a lot of areas that we've energized, then eventually all of them will have to be disconnected. So one of the challenge really is not just providing power to households, but providing livelihood, providing sustainable development in the areas that we serve. And the Department of Energy, together with the distribution utilities like the cooperatives, your member consumer owners, play a very important role in achieving this inclusive growth and development that we so long desire. So again, maraming salamat po sa lahat, and we look forward to collaborating with you more in the future in a lot of policies pa that we will have to implement and will have to promulgate, and a lot of things that we need to do, no? So with that, again, thank you very much. Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Maayong buntag sa tanan. Galaygo ng Diyos.
Thank you, Secret. Sir Mark, do you have anything to say?
Yes, for our end, from the Rural Electrification Administration Management Division, we would like to express our gratitude as well to our principals, so USEC Vanessa, for staying this entire virtual IEC, also to Director Mario Marasigan, to Assistant Director Irma Esconde. We also have Assistant Secretary Dentor De Lola, and to all the participants from NPC to NEA, and to all our participating associations, as well as the electric cooperatives and distribution utilities. So we would like to thank you for participating in our first virtual IEC for the QTP revised guidelines. So I think, Mau, we can just request everyone to open their cameras, and we'll have our virtual photo shoot, photo documentation. Matt, kindly end the slide so that we can have a grid. So, hindi ko po masyado bang kabisado, but may I request everyone to take their screenshots of their screen kasi limited lang po to 9 photos po ito. Sir Paeng, yan. So, si Sir Paeng kasi po yung nasa screen ko. Sir Paeng, ano po yung yung camera, yan. So, I request everyone to take a screenshot of your monitor para at least then we can consolidate it further para po we can have our photo documentation. So everyone, so 3, 2, 1, smile. So thank you. I think that would be all, Miss MC.
Thank you, Sir Mark. Thank you po sa lahat ng umattend today. So, remind lang po namin, we'll be sending the copy of the presentation, tsaka po yung recording po if you wish to have the copy. And the copy of the proceedings once we are already done with it. Thank you very much din po for to the team, kay Ma'am Alice, kay John Matthew, Nelson, and Cha for facilitating this virtual IEC. So again, maraming salamat po. Thank you.
Thank you po.
Thank you, everyone. Have a safe day.
Thank you.
Yeah, maraming
Thank
salamat
you.
po sa lahat. Please
Thank
stay
you po.
safe po.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Attorney Mai.
Thank you, Attorney Mai.
Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Mai.
But that's real delight muna. May dual active formula with probiotics and prebiotic fibers para healthier tummy and stronger immunity.